Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Ring of Destiny. Episode 5. Chapter 91. Sure enough, seeing Wang Hanan and David's intimate actions, many men were instantly disheartened, and Kui Ziwen also looked at David with jealousy in his eyes. David introduced Wang Hanan one by one. When introducing Dao Sun Xiaomeng, David said, "This is Uncle Sun's daughter Sun Xiaomeng. Her father and my father are comrades in arms." When Wang Hanan heard it, he immediately understood that Chen Baoqiu wanted to ask someone to find a job at that time, and it should be Sun Xiaomen's father. So Wang Hanan enthusiastically stepped forward and took Sun Xiaomen's hand. "Sister Xiaomeng is so beautiful, I have heard Brother David and Uncle Chen mention you for a long time, but I have never seen it." Wang Hanan's enthusiasm also made Sun Xiaomeng smile. "Sister Hanan, you are also pretty, this is Zhang Tongjian, we are in the same group." David pointed to the corner. Zhang Tongjian with glasses said. "Hello," Wang Hanan smiled and stretched out her hand. "Hello, hello." Zhang Tongjian's face flushed instantly, and he gently shook hands with Wang Hanan. Seeing Zhang Tongjian like that made everyone burst into laughter. Soon, everyone became acquainted and began to sing and drink, and everyone began to attack David one after another, toasting David one by one. Seeing this, Wang Hanan stood in front of David. "You toast like this, Brother David will be drunk in a while, I will drink with you." Wang Hanan took a glass of beer and drank it. Wang Hanan took the lead for David. Of course, these men would not refuse. In their opinion, Wang Hanan can get away with just 2 bottles of beer. But soon, these people knew that they were wrong, how outrageous they were. "I saw Wang Hanan drinking with everyone, but he didn't even look like he was about to get drunk, and his face didn't even change." This time, everyone was dumbfounded, even David looked at Wang Hanan in disbelief. No one could have imagined that a girl who looked so weak could actually drink so much. At this time, there were more than 30 empty bottles at Wang Hanan's feet. Wang Hanan was fine, while the others were all blushing, and some people were crooked. "Okay, let's sing, don't drink all the time." Seeing this, Kui Ziwen could only stop everyone from drinking. If he was drinking, Wang Hanan would be fine, and it is estimated that everyone else would be drunk. "Sister Hanan, you can drink too much," Sun Xiaomeng said to Wang Hanan with envy and surprise in her eyes. Wang Hanan smiled. "I don't have anything else, I just can drink. Sister, you are too good. If I have your drinker and drink in the future, I see who dares to compete with me." Wang Lanlan also sat with Wang Hanan and said with admiration. "Sister Lan Lan, you can also practice this amount of alcohol. I'll teach you another day, just for the name of the two of us, it's just fate," Wang Hanan said with a smile. I have to say that Wang Hanan is really good at communication. It didn't take long for the 3 women to become good friends who can talk about everything. "Sister, you said that you are good looking and have a good temper. Why do you like David?" "When I look at David, he looks like a big tail, which is annoying." Wang Lanlan also drank some wine and said to Wang Hanan without shyness. "David sits by himself, doesn't sing, doesn't drink, and occasionally says a few words to Zhang Tongjian, it really seems a little out of place." "Sister Lanlan, in fact, Brother David is a good person. We have been together since we were young. Maybe you are not familiar with him." Wang Hanan wasn't angry either, just explained lightly. Seeing Wang Hanan say this, Wang Lanlan couldn't help belittling David, so she picked up the microphone and said, "Let's go, let's sing a song." Chapter 92. Wang Hanan not only looks good, but also sings first class. Her voice is no different from the original singer. This time, it made many men jealous of David, especially Kui Ziwen, who looked at Wang Hanin with more and more hot eyes, but Sun Xiaomeng was present, and he didn't show too much enthusiasm. With Wang Hanin singing, the atmosphere in the entire private room almost reached its peak, and everyone was dizzy and jumping. Zhang Tongjian was also poured a few cups. At this time, his face was red and he stood up and jumped along with him. Only David sat alone in the corner, watching quietly. Just when everyone was having a good time, the door of the private room was suddenly pushed open, and a bald middle-aged man walked in with a glass of wine, followed by 2 bodyguards in suits behind the middle-aged man. Seeing that someone suddenly broke in, everyone stopped and looked at it in confusion. Wang Hanin also put down the microphone in his hand. The middle-aged man's eyes were a little blurry, his face was flushed, and he was obviously drinking too much. After breaking in, he glanced at the people in the private room, and raised his mouth. It turned out to be a bunch of raw melon eggs, who just sang it. "It's pretty good, I'll sing 2 songs in the private room with me." The words of the middle-aged people made everyone look at each other in dismay, and no one dared to make a sound. It was obvious that these middle-aged people were not ordinary people, and their group were just wage earners, but no one dared to mess with them. Seeing that no one was talking, the middle-aged man turned his attention to Wang Hanin. Wang Lanlan followed the 3 girls Sun Xiaomeng, because only the 3 of them had the microphone in their hands. "The 3 chicks are all good, take the 3 of them to my private room." As the middle-aged man spoke, he took out a stack of 100 yuan bills from his pocket and threw them at the 3 girls. The 2 bodyguards behind him walked over. This frightened the 3 of them, and they were so frightened that they retreated again and again, and Kui Ziwen stepped forward with a somewhat ugly face and stood in front of him. Now there is only his high status here. If he doesn't show up at this time, he will be laughed at, not to mention that Sun Xiaomeng is still his girlfriend. How can I watch my girlfriend being taken away, but I am indifferent. "This gentleman, who are you?" "We are just here to sing and relax. The 3 of them are our friends, not accompanying singers," Kui Ziwen said to the middle-aged man. "It doesn't matter if I sing with you. I give you money. Don't you feel ashamed when you come to this kind of place and only dare to order beer? Let the 3 little girls sing for me, and I will order you a few bottles of Lafite." The middle-aged man stepped forward and patted Kui Ziwen's face. The actions of the middle-aged man can be described as not very harmful and highly insulting. This is to treat Kui Ziwen as a little boy. Kui Ziwen got angry and pushed the middle-aged man away, almost preventing him from falling down. As soon as he pushed it away, Kui Ziwen regretted it. He didn't know who the other party was. "Damn, push me!" the middle-aged man said angrily, "Beat him for me." After that, the 2 bodyguards rushed towards Kui Ziwen, which scared Kui Ziwen enough. When they saw that the other party was about to make a move, the others didn't care about being afraid, and grabbed the wine bottle and stood with Kui Ziwen. After all, Kui Ziwen was their manager, and now is the time to show their loyalty. There are only 3 people on the other side. With so many of them together, they will definitely be able to beat each other. When the 2 bodyguards saw this, they were all stunned for a moment. They didn't expect that this group of young people was actually quite united, and the 2 bodyguards didn't dare to do anything for a while. At this moment, Kui Ziwen was very happy. Seeing that the 2 bodyguards did not dare to do anything, he immediately stepped forward and kicked one of them. "Get out of here now, and I'll just pretend that this never happened." Chapter 93. When the bald middle-aged man saw this, his eyes narrowed slightly, but when he looked at the crowd, they were all stunned. Wait for me, report your name if you have the ability, and see if I won't kill you. My name is Kui Zaiwan, and I'm waiting for you here. Do you think my brothers are vegetarians? At this moment, Kui Zaiwan felt like a big man on the Tao, and that feeling was refreshing. Good, 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 the middle-aged man said 3 good words in a row, turned around and left with 2 bodyguards. After the middle-aged man left, Kui Zaiwan felt very happy. He had never felt this way before. Manager Kui is too good. With that kick just now, the other party didn't even dare. Manager Kui was like that just now. Those who didn't know it thought it was the eldest brother on the road. Manager Kui is awesome. I doubt whether Manager Kui has ever been on the road. A group of people touted Kui Zaiwan one after another, which made Kui Zaiwan go to heaven. Kui Zaiwan was proud in his heart, but he pretended to be light-hearted and said, "It's all up to everyone to support me, since the brothers are interesting enough, I can't be stingy today, Kui Zaiwan, this time I will serve a few bottles of law fight, how many brothers try it all? Brilliant, long live Manager Kui." When everyone heard law fight, they all shouted excitedly. You must know that migrant workers like them rarely drink this kind of wine. Zaiwan, let's go. If the other party really asks someone to come, it will be troublesome, Sun Xiaomeng persuaded Kui Zaiwan. At this time, Kui Zaiwan used his drunkenness and so many people to support him. How could he be afraid of the bald middle-aged man? Don't worry, Xiaomeng, with me here, you don't have to be afraid, Kui Zaiwan patted his chest and said. Manager Kui, I heard that this KTV is the store of Jiatang, which is run by Lin Tianhu. We just had a fight, will it be? An employee said cautiously. I'm afraid, I know Lin Tianhu very well, don't worry. Kui Zaiwan waved his hand and said cooingly. When Sun Xiaomeng heard that it was Lin Tianhu's store, she immediately relaxed and said, since it's Lord Tiger's store, it's easy to handle, Zaiwan is very familiar with Lord Tiger, and my company's external account is just a word from Zaiwan, Tiger Lord helped to come up. Sun Xiaomen's words immediately made everyone look at Kui Zaiwan with admiration. It would be awesome to know the underground emperor in Horrendal, but he could show off for a lifetime. Manager Kui is so secretive, he actually knows him even with Master Tiger. Since we know Tiger Master, then we are still afraid of a ball. If the other party dares to come, he will cry and call his mother, let's drink, with Manager Kui here, who dares to provoke us? Hearing that Kui Zaiwan knew Lin Tianhu, these guys became even more reckless. David sat in the corner of his mouth was slightly raised, and he smiled faintly. It seems that this Kui Zaiwan doesn't suffer, and he always lives in his dreams. Why are you smiling? You still have a smile on your face. That old guy was going to take us away just now, you were so frightened. Wang Hanan is your girlfriend, you can't even protect your own girlfriend, what kind of man are you? Laugh out loud. Seeing David sitting in the corner laughing, Wang Lanlin immediately rebuked with dissatisfaction. Yes, is he still a man? His girlfriend was about to be taken away, and he turned a blind eye. If Manager Kui hadn't come forward, you would have been cuckolded today. And this Zhang Tongjian, who doesn't dare to move while sitting, has no backbone at all. Everyone began to criticize David and Zhang Tongjian one after another. After all, they just sat there and didn't move. Chapter 94. David knew that he didn't have to move, and that Zhang Tongjian was really too scared to move. Okay, ignore these two cowards, go out and ask for law fight, let's drink, Kui Zaiwan waved his hand and said. Soon someone went out to ask for a drink, while others gave David and Zhang Tongjian a cold look, and no one paid any attention to them. At this time, in the office of the general manager of Dynasty KTV, the bald middle-aged man was inside with 2 bodyguards. The office decoration is very luxurious. Behind a desk that is more than 3 meters long sits a man in a Chinese tunic suit. Behind the man stands a girl, wearing a cheongsam, the hem of which is open to the waist, revealing fair skin and a face with thick makeup on it. He is pressing his head for the man in the tunic suit. This man in Zhongshan suit is Ho Chun-li, the KTV manager of the dynasty, and he is also Lin Tianhu's right-hand man, otherwise Lin Tianhu would not have handed over this KTV to him. Boss Jian, what made you angrily find me here? Ho Chun-li half squinted his eyes and asked lightly. Manager Ho, your dynasty KTV is too messy. Just now, a bunch of Leng Toking actually beat my people, and now there are clear footprints on my people. The bald money boss pointed to one of his bodyguards and said. There is also a clearly visible footprint on the bodyguard's belly. Is there such a thing? Ho Chun-li opened his eyes and sat up straight. Who is the other party? Did Along help? In Ho Chun-li's view, only the guys from the Along gang dare to make trouble here. It doesn't look like it, it's just a bunch of young people. I heard that some girls in their private room sang well, and I wanted to take them to my private room to sing 2 songs, but I didn't expect these guys to dare to do it. Boss Jian's eyes flashed with chills, and he gritted his teeth and said, I see that this is Lord Tiger's place, so I came over and told Manager Ho. If Manager Ho doesn't care, then I will find someone myself. Manager, don't blame me. It's just a bunch of little boys. Why is Boss Jian angry? I'll send someone to follow Boss Jian, Ho Chun-li said, and shouted towards the door. Binzi. At this time, a man with a fierce face and tattoos on his arms walked in. Brother Ho, Na Binzi shouted respectfully. Someone was making trouble at KTV just now. You can follow Boss Jian to see if you don't kill anyone. Recently, Lord Tiger has spoken, let's keep a low profile. Ho Chun-li ordered to that Binzi. I know Brother Ho, Binzi nodded. Manager Ho, thank you very much. Boss Jian bowed his hands to Ho Chun-li. Boss Jian is being polite. If you are angry with me, of course I have to take care of it. In the future, Boss Jian will just take care of my business, Ho Chun-li smiled lightly. Soon, Boss Jian took Binzi to the private room where David and the others were, followed by more than a dozen KTV thugs. In the private room at this time, Kui Ziwan and the others were drinking law fight, all of them flushed and shouting excitedly, when suddenly the door was kicked open. Everyone was stunned. When they saw that it was the bald middle-aged man who brought them back, they all showed panic on their faces. After all, there were more than a dozen people behind the other party this time, and they all looked fierce. Boss Jian, who moved the hand just now? Binzi asked Boss Jian. Boss Jian kept saying to Kui Ziwan, it's him, this kid beat me up. Binzi glanced at Kui Ziwan, then glanced around, and immediately knew that these people were ordinary people, not just on the road. You just beat up Boss Jian's person? Binzi asked indifferently as he walked up to Kui Ziwan. Seeing Binzi's face and the tattoos on his body, Kui Ziwan was a little scared, but with the strength of the wine, Kui Ziwan nodded, yes, I beat him, they bullied my girlfriend. Chapter 95. Binzi saw that Kui Ziwan actually admitted it directly, but he was a little surprised. He looked Kui Ziwan up and down and said, you have the talent, you dare to act, and I will not embarrass you. Now go to your knees and apologize to Boss Jian. Today it's over. When he heard that he was asked to kneel, Kui Ziwan would agree, shook his head and said, let me kneel for him, that's impossible, it's him who provokes us first. When Binzi saw Kui Zaiwen's rejection, his face suddenly turned cold. No one dares to reject my words. With that said, Binzi suddenly shot, grabbed Kui Zaiwen's collar directly, and lifted Kui Zaiwen up. When the others saw this, although they wanted to go up and help Kui Zaiwen, they were all cowardly when they saw the dozen or so thugs who were staring at Boss Qian behind him. Zaiwen, Sun Xiaomeng saw that the other party actually made a move, and immediately shouted and rushed over, "Let him go, my father is Sun Fuhe, and we are the employees of the Sui family's heart." Sun Xiaomeng tried hard to break Binzi's hand, but no matter how hard she tried, Binzi didn't move at all. At this moment, Kui Zaiwen's face turned red, his breathing began to be difficult, his eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. The fear of death haunts him constantly. Seeing Kui Zaiwen like this, Sun Xiaomeng was very anxious, and continued to shout, "This is Lord Tiger's territory. You are in Tiger Lord's territory. Tiger Lord will never let you go. He knows Tiger." As soon as Sun Xiaomen's voice fell, Binzi's expression changed slightly, his brows furrowed, and his hand was released. Cough cough cough, after Kui Zaiwen was released, he coughed hard and gasped for breath. "Ji Yuan, are you all right?" Sun Xiaomeng asked with concern. Others saw that Binzi heard Tiger Lord, and immediately let go, thinking that Binzi was very afraid of Lin Tianhu, so they shouted, "Our manager Kui and Tiger Lord are very familiar, you dare to touch him, Tiger Lord? I can't forgive you, let me tell you, if our manager Kui said a word, then Lin Tianhu should be obedient. Just yesterday, our manager Kui only made a phone call, and then Lin Tianhu went to help and ask for the account right away. If you messed with manager Kui, just wait to die." Those people in the sales department under Kui Zaiwen, knowing that the other party was afraid of Lin Tianhu, started shouting one by one, blowing Kui Zaiwen into the sky. After David in the corner heard this, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but lift slightly. These ignorant guys, the more he said this, the more he pushed Kui Zaiwen towards the brink of death. When Kui Zaiwen heard that these guys were touting him indiscriminately, he was so frightened that he could not wait to scold these guys fiercely. Listening to everyone's words, Binzi's face became more and more ugly, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more intense. Although Ho Chun Li told him not to kill people, but these guys were bluffing outside in the name of Lord Tiger, how could he bear it? Seeing Binzi's face getting more and more ugly, Kui Zaiwen's group thought they were afraid, and they all became proud. "You know what you're afraid of? Get out now, if we call Lord Tiger, none of you will be able to leave." Sun Xiaomeng also followed Binzi with a proud face. "Shut up, shut the fuck up," Kui Zaiwen yelled at Sun Xiaomeng. Only he himself knew that he didn't know Lin Tianhu at all, and he hadn't even seen Lin Tianhu. Seeing Kui Zaiwen yelling at him suddenly, Sun Xiaomeng was stunned, wondering what happened to Kui Zaiwen, but he didn't dare to speak. "You know Tiger Master?" Binzi asked Kui Zaiwen gloomily for a moment. Kui Zaiwen is now being held up by everyone, and there is no way to do it. If he admits that he does not know him at this time, he will be laughed at by everyone. Chapter 96. Gritting his teeth, Kui Zaiwen could only nod his head. "I've met Tiger Master." Kui Zaiwen's words were ambiguous. After all, he had seen Lin Tianhu, but he did not necessarily know Lin Tianhu. Originally, you only need to kneel down and apologize, but you don't want you to be swindling outside with the name of Tiger Lord. Since that's the case, then none of you want to leave today. Binzi's words were tinged with chills, which made these guys who didn't know the heights of the sky felt a chill. "Ha ha ha, UBA5TARDS, do you know who this is in front of you? He is the #1 thug of Brother Ho, under the command of Lord Tiger, and you are bragging in front of him, saying that you know Lord Tiger? Look! Come on, you've come to the end of your life," the money boss burst out laughing. "These people are just ordinary guys who can't be ordinary. How could they know Lin Tianhu?" Boss Qian knew that they must be pretentious. Sure enough, after hearing what Boss Qian said, Kui Ziwen's forehead was instantly covered with cold sweat. He didn't expect that he was pretending to be forced and bumped into the muzzle of the gun. It's just that other people under Kui Ziwen didn't think so. They thought that Kui Ziwen really knew Lin Tianhu. That Sun Xiaomeng has always believed that Kui Ziwen must know Lin Tianhu. Even if Kui Ziwen doesn't know him, his friends must know him. Otherwise, why would Lin Tianhu come up with the debts of his family? "Boss Qian, our brother also drank a little wine just now. Now my brother is not with you." "I hope Boss Qian," Kui Ziwen was discouraged and started to apologize to Boss Qian. It's just that the words were not finished, but Binzi interrupted directly, "Dare to borrow the name of Tiger Lord, this is not as simple as an apology, can you survive, you see fortune?" After Binzi finished speaking, he waved his hand directly to his subordinates and said, "Take everyone away, and let Brother Ho go and deal with it." Soon, more than a dozen vicious thugs directly surrounded them, making Kui Ziwen and Sun Xiaoman's faces change with fright. Zhang Tongjian in the corner was trembling even more at this time, his pants were wet, and his hands were tightly grasping David's sleeves. He is just a college student who has just graduated and not long ago. I have never seen such a scene before, and now I am scared to death. Seeing Zhang Tongjian like that, David patted him on the shoulder and said, "Relax, it'll be all right, soon." Kui Ziwen and the others were taken to Ho Chun-Li's office. At this time, Ho Chun-Li was closing his eyes slightly, enjoying the secretary's massage, when he suddenly saw Binzi brought back a group of people, and all of them were little hairy children. The more he frowned and said, "Binzi, bring a group of little hairy children. What is the child doing?" "Brother Ho, this is the group of people under the money boss," Binzi said. "Didn't I let you deal with it? What are you doing with my office?" Ho Chun-Li looked a little unhappy. "Brother Ho, this guy said he knew Lord Tiger, and he was very familiar with him, so I brought it here to let Brother Ho go down," Binzi hurriedly explained. "What?" When Ho Chun-Li heard this, he sat up straight, then looked at Kui Ziwen coldly, "Do you know Tiger Master?" I, Kui Ziwen stammered, "My friend knows. What's your friend's name?" "I've been with Lord Tiger for many years, and I know the names of all his friends," Ho Chun-Li continued to ask. This time, Kui Ziwen was stopped. He didn't know Lin Tianhu's friends at all. With his level, how could he have a relationship with Lin Tianhu? Snapped. Suddenly, Ho Chun-Li slammed the table and stood up. "You guys are so bold, you dare to use the name of Lord Tiger." Chapter 97. At this moment, everyone's expressions changed suddenly, and Kui Ziwen was even more sobered up by a cold air that went straight to the top of his head. He never imagined that he was vain and pretended to know Lin Tianhu, but he didn't want to cause trouble. Seeing Kui Ziwen's reaction, Boss Qian sneered, stepped forward and gave Kui Ziwen a slap in the face. "Aren't you very good? People who dare to beat me, dare to use the name of Tiger Lord, I see that you are impatient to live." Boss Qian slapped that Kui Ziwen into reality, and hurriedly begged for mercy. "Boss Qian, I was wrong, I don't dare anymore, I don't dare anymore." Kui Ziwen's begging for mercy also brought those under him and Sun Xiaomeng back to reality in an instant. They knew that Kui Ziwen didn't know any Lin Tianhu at all, he was just bragging. At this moment, everyone began to tremble. If Kui Ziwen didn't know Lin Tianhu, what else would they have to rely on? Wrong. Boss Qian sneered, it's useless to admit my mistake now, just wait to die. Hearing this, Kui Ziwen couldn't hold it any longer, and knelt to the ground with a thud. Brother Ho, I don't dare to use the name Tiger Lord anymore, please, please forgive me. Kui Ziwen was already crying bitterly at this time, and he regretted it to death. Kui Ziwen is already like this, and the other people are even more ashen, and Sun Xiaomeng looks at Kui Ziwen in surprise, not knowing what he is thinking. Looking at Kui Ziwen who was on his knees begging for mercy, and at a group of panicked young people, Ho Chunli looked at Boss Qian and said, Boss Qian, this matter started because of you, how do you deal with it? This is Ho Chunli's face to sell the money boss. After all, the money boss is a major KTV customer. You help Lang Toking, it doesn't matter even if it's abolished, let them all get out. Boss Qian waved his hand. When Kui Ziwen heard this, he kept kowtowing and thanking him, but when everyone was relieved, Boss Qian glanced at Wang Hanan and Sun Xiaomeng with silver eyes and said, men can go. But the three women must stay with me. Upon hearing this, Wang Hanan and Sun Xiaomen's expressions suddenly changed, and Kui Ziwen's expression became very embarrassed. After all, Sun Xiaomeng is his girlfriend, he can ignore Wang Hanan and Wang Lanlan, but he can't ignore Sun Xiaomeng. After all, Sun Fuhe just recognized him. Boss Qian, this is my girlfriend, can I take her away, and she will stay with you? My girlfriend and I have been living together for more than a year, so I think Boss Qian doesn't like it. Kui Ziwen pointed to Sun Xiaomeng, and then said with a smile. In fact, he never touched Sun Xiaomeng at all, but he just wanted to use this to get Sun Xiaomeng out of danger. Sun Xiaomeng glanced at Kui Ziwen, but didn't say anything. After all, at this time, it was most important to get out first. Sure enough, when Kui Ziwen said this, a bit of disgust flashed in the eyes of Boss Qian, and then he waved his hand and said, go away, leave those two women behind. Seeing this, Kui Ziwen desperately followed Boss Qian to thank him, then turned around and left. Manager Kui, don't leave me, don't leave me, Wang Lanlan panicked and hurriedly pulled Kui Ziwen's arm. And Wang Hanan also looked panicked and looked at David helplessly. At this time, she could only ask David for help. After all, she was not familiar with these people, and no one would offend these people in front of her for her. Lanlan, just drink 2 glasses of wine with Boss Qian. I'll be fine. I'll come back to pick you up later. Kui Ziwen pushed Wang Lanlan away. Wang Lanlan suddenly became desperate, and Wang Hanan, with tears in her eyes, lightly grabbed David's clothes. She wanted David to go, but she didn't want to stay by herself. She was very contradictory. Chapter 98. Don't worry, I won't leave, David smiled at Wang Hanan. Brother Chen, let's go. Zhang Tongjian rushed out of the room first, then turned back and shouted at David. That Sun Xiaomeng also looked back and found that David was motionless, so he also shouted, David. Boss Qian also saw that David had no intention of leaving, so he said with a cold face, why, I can't bear my little girlfriend, don't you want to leave? As Boss Qian said, he reached out to Wang Hanan and touched Wang Hanan's face. At this moment, Wang Hanan was so frightened that his face was pale, and he didn't even dare to dodge. But just when Boss Qian's hand was about to touch Wang Hanan, David suddenly grabbed the Boss Qian's wrist. I didn't even think about leaving, David said, exerting a little force, only to hear the sound of a bone crack, and David's wrist was suddenly broken by David. The severe pain caused Boss Qian to howl instantly. The heart-piercing howl sounded very intimidating. Paralyzed, My hand is broken, let go, or I will kill you, and even play with your girlfriend, Boss Chien roared loudly with a grim expression on his face. Bang! David kicked it out, kicked Boss Chien's lower body directly, and kicked Boss Chien out directly. And that Boss Chien lay hunched on the ground, his face turned purple. David's kick directly made Boss Chien lose his ability to be a man. When Ho Chun Li saw this, his anger immediately rose, and he dared to beat his guests in front of him, which made Ho Chun Li feel shameless. Kid, you dare to do something in front of me, you are really kind. Ho Chun Li's face was terrifyingly cold, and he waved his big hand. Close the door, no one is allowed to leave. Kui Ziwen and the others, who were about to leave, were all driven back and locked in the office again. This time, everyone was waiting for David angrily. If David hadn't pretended to force him, they would have left now. David, what the H3LL are you pretending to be? We can't leave now, Kui Ziwen roared at David. Now that David has beaten the Chien boss like this matter must not be let go. You said that everyone has let go, but this guy David is pretending to be a woman, and now even they are implicated. David, if you want to die, please pull us up, that's right, what are you pretending to be? If you can fight, go to the street and fight, it's over, I'm going to be killed now, everyone is accusing David. Even Wang Lanlan was no exception. Although she was the one who was left behind, she would have a glass of wine with her, and if she couldn't, she would sleep with her, and it might have passed, but now, she beat people like this. I'm afraid it can't be solved by sleeping. Only Wang Hanin looked at David worriedly, with tears in his eyes. Brother David, I'm sorry. Wang Hanin knew that if it wasn't for himself, David would not have done it, and now David might have to go to jail, or even lose his life. It'll be fine, don't worry, David smiled lightly. Seeing that David seemed to be nothing, the others were even more angry this time, and the accusations and insults against David were even more difficult to sound. And that Ho Chun Li's face became more and more gloomy. Binzi, let this kid be abolished. Binzi nodded, and he rushed towards David with a vigorous step, and his fist as big as a sandbag swung towards David's head. If this punch hit David's head, it would definitely burst his brain on the spot. Seeing this, everyone was so frightened that they dodged, for fear that they would be splashed with blood. Only Wang Hanin's eyes were firm, and he stood in front of David with clenched teeth. Chapter 99. Since David is for herself, Wang Hanin also intends to risk her life. She can't watch David be beaten to death in front of her. A huge strong wind was blowing towards Wang Hanin, so scared that Wang Hanin closed his eyes and pulled David with one hand, leaving David behind him. Hanin, Sun Xiaomeng couldn't help shouting. Although I just met with Wang Hanin, Sun Xiaomeng felt that Wang Hanin was a good person, knowledgeable and reasonable. Seeing Binzi's fist in front of Wang Hanin even felt the breath of death, but after a gust of wind blew, there was no more movement. When she slowly opened her eyes, she found that Binzi's fist was there. A few centimeters away in front of his eyes, and David's hand directly grabbed that Binzi's fist, preventing him from moving forward. This time, everyone's eyes widened, feeling incredible, and that Binzi's expression also changed, with a deep shock in his eyes, because he could feel that from David's body, there was a steady stream of power in the burst. No matter how hard he tried, it was of no avail. If you weren't Lin Tianhu's subordinates, you'd all be corpses now. David gave it away slightly, and that Binzi's body suddenly stepped back, and finally sat on the ground. Seeing Binzi like this, Ho Chun Li suddenly became popular. Damn, trash, can't even handle a little kid. Ho Chun Li kicked that Binzi fiercely. Binzi got up in a hurry and lowered his head in embarrassment. Although he fell, Binzi was not injured. David was merciful. After all, these people are his own. Let us go, today's business is over, or you will regret it, David said to Ho Chun-li. Regret? Ho Chun-li sneered, I never knew what regret was. After Ho Chun-li finished speaking, the door was opened, and dozens of people rushed in with machetes, directly surrounding David and the others. There were just a dozen people around, and they were only bare-handed. Although they were all fierce, but Kui Ziwan and the others were all able to control their own bodies. But at the moment, surrounded by dozens of people holding bright machetes, and feeling the chill on the machete, Kui Ziwan and the others were all frightened. Several people fainted from fright on the spot, and many people urinated directly. Even Kui Ziwan was not spared, the pants got wet. Boy, today I can chop you into minced meat, do you believe it? Ho Chun-li said grimly. I seem to have heard that Lin Tianhe doesn't let you fight and kill, and let you do business seriously, but you are making such a big deal today, why don't you ask Lin Tianhe for instructions? David asked calmly. Ho Chun-li was stunned for a moment. After glancing at David, he hesitated for a moment, and then said to his subordinate, take care of them, one is not allowed to let go, I went to Tiger Lord to call. After Ho Chun-li finished speaking, he took out his phone and walked out. Seeing Ho Chun-li go to ask Lin Tianhe for instructions, Kui Ziwan and the others rolled their eyes in horror. You must know that Lin Tianhe's reputation in Horrendal is very bad. He is a murderous and ruthless master. If Lin Tianhe was really disturbed, none of them would be able to survive. Not only would they not survive, but they would be tortured to death. David, you are paralyzed, we are all going to die now, don't even think about living, you have to recruit Tiger Lord, we are all finished. Kui Ziwan saw that Ho Chun-li went to call Lin Tianhe, so he stared at David and cursed. Chapter 100. David frowned, and a cold glow appeared in his eyes as he looked at Kui Ziwan. Kui Ziwan suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and was so frightened that he quickly closed his mouth. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, Dad. Dad? Sun Xiaomeng cried with fright, mumbling like she was crazy. For a while, many people began to cry, and the whole room was screaming. On the other side, Ho Chun-li called Lin Tianhe. He wanted to ask Lin Tianhe how to deal with these troublesome little boys. If it was normal, Ho Chun-li would call the shots himself, and David and the others would do it, just a few ordinary young people, even if they disappeared, it would not cause any sensation. But now it can't be done. Lin Tianhe has clearly ordered them not to fight and kill them, and they will kill people indiscriminately. Ho Chun-li can only ask Lin Tianhe what to do. At this time, Lin Tianhe was already asleep. After receiving the call from Ho Chun-li, he yawned and said, Monkey, it's so late, did something happen to KTV? Master Hu, there are a few little hairy children making trouble at KTV and hurting Binzi. It's too arrogant. I want to ask Master Hu, if you can get rid of these guys, Ho Chun-li asked cautiously. Little boy. Lin Tianhe frowned, who are they? Are they from the Along gang? With Lin Tianhe's reputation in Horrendal, no one dared to make trouble in his territory, unless it was a member of the Along gang. After all, Feng Sihai was just injured by David some time ago. Now, it is not impossible for the Along gang to find trouble with their Juyatang. No, it's just a bunch of stupefied youths who say they work in some company of the Sui family. There's a guy named David who injured Binzi, Ho Chun-li said. Hearing David's words, Lin Tianhe jumped off the bed. Monkey, I'll rush over now, you're not allowed to do it for me, just wait for me, After Lin Tianhe finished speaking, he hung up the phone and ran out. Ho Chunli heard Lin Tianhe's anxious voice. His face was full of doubts, but Lin Tianhe had spoken, he had to listen. When I returned to the office was already stinking. Depend on, Ho Chunli pinched his nose, open the window, what a bunch of stuff. Soon the window was opened, and fresh air blew in, which blew out the stench in the room a lot. Lin Tianhe said that he should wait honestly, but Ho Chunli could only wave his hand and let the men with the knife withdraw to avoid being seen by Lin Tianhe. I've already informed the Tiger Lord, and the Tiger Lord will be here in a while. If you have any last words, you can leave first. Ho Chunli looked at David and the others coldly, with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. When they heard that Lin Tianhe was coming, this time Kui Ziwen and the others were stimulated again. The scene that was a little quiet just now turned into howling and howling in an instant. Who is Lin Tianhe? The entire Horrendal, even a 3-year-old child knows, that is the devil who kills without blinking an eye. Brother Ho, it's all David's hands, it has nothing to do with us, let us go. Kui Ziwen knelt down to Ho Chunli again. Everyone else also knelt down and begged for mercy, one by one kept kowtow. On the other hand, David held Sun Xiaomeng with one hand and Wang Hanin with the other, and did not let them both kneel. No matter how much Sun Xiaomeng thinks about herself, after all, Sun Fuhe is a good person and takes good care of David's family. David can't ignore Sun Xiaomeng. Seeing David not kneeling, Ho Chunli wanted to scold him angrily, but when he remembered Lin Tianhe's advice, Ho Chunli swallowed the words. Humph, when Lord Tiger comes, you'll look good, and then I'll see if you're still majestic, Ho Chunli thought to himself. Chapter 101. The waiting time was long. Kui Ziwen and his group knelt on the ground, their knees were in great pain, but no one dared to get up, just wait like this. After 20 minutes, the door of the office was suddenly pushed open, and Lin Tianhe hurried in. Master Tiger, Ho Chunli hurried up to meet him. When Kui Ziwen and the others heard that Lin Tianhe was coming, they looked up one by one. When their eyes fell on Lin Tianhe, they were all so frightened that they almost fainted. Few people have seen Lin Tianhe, but when they saw him now, the bloodthirsty aura on Lin Tianhe's body immediately made them tremble with fear. Lin Tianhe ignored Ho Chunli, but his eyes fell directly on David. However, David gave Lin Tianhe a wink, but Lin Tianhe did not come forward to recognize him. Wang Hanin and Sun Xiaomeng are all here. If they know that David knows Lin Tianhe, then David's parents will also know. Lin Tianhe looked at Kui Ziwen who were kneeling on the ground, then turned his face coldly, slapped Ho Chunli fiercely and said, "How did I tell you? Didn't I tell you to wait honestly?" Ho Chunli was slapped and immediately blinded, while Lin Tianhe crouched down and helped Kui Ziwen up. "It's my poor discipline, please bear with me." After Lin Tianhe finished speaking, he looked at Ho Chunli and said, "What happened today?" Ho Chunli didn't dare to hide it, so he could only tell everything about it. When he heard that it was Boss Jian who caused it, Lin Tianhe's face turned cold, and he glanced at Boss Jian who was still hunched on the ground. "Master Tiger, Boss Jian felt Lin Tianhe's cold eyes, and stood up with gritted teeth, wanting to explain. "Break his limbs and drag him out. He will not be allowed to step into the dynasty KTV in the future." Lin Tianhe didn't listen to Boss Jian's explanation, but ordered someone to cut off Boss Jian's limbs and threw it out. Listening to Boss Jian's screams, Kui Ziwen and the others were frightened and wet their pants again, and Lin Tianhe's brutality made them tremble with fear. "Everyone, today is because my subordinates are not strict in discipline. All your consumption is free of charge. Everyone, go back and continue to play." I am sending someone to deliver a few bottles of good wine, Lin Tianhu said with a smile. Lin Tianhu's sudden change of expression made Kui Ziwen and the others bewildered. They didn't know what medicine was sold in Lin Tianhu's gourd. They stood there dumbfounded, and no one dared to move. Then we will thank Lord Tiger for his kindness. Seeing that no one spoke or moved, David could only speak. It should be, it's my lax discipline in this matter today, Lin Tianhu said humbly. David pulled Wang Hanan and Sun Xiaomeng, who were still shocked, out of the office and walked back to the private room. When Kui Ziwen and the others saw this, they all walked back like corpses. Master Tiger, these people are, snapped. Without waiting for Ho Chun-li to finish speaking, Lin Tianhu slapped that Ho Chun-li in the face again. Do you know who that David is? Lin Tianhu asked coldly to Ho Chun-li after finishing the fight. Ho Chun-li shook his head, I don't know. He is our hall master, our immediate boss. Lin Tianhu's words suddenly changed Ho Chun-li's face. As Lin Tianhu's right-hand man, Zhuyi Hall is a hall under the command of Taipei Hall. Ho Chun-li knew it, and Lin Tianhu also told him that the hall master of Taipei Hall had appeared. But he never imagined that the hall master was today's David, a character who looked inconspicuous. Then, that Feng Sihai was defeated by him. Ho Chun-li asked in shock. Chapter 102. What do you think? Lin Tianhu gave Ho Chun-li a cold look. Today, if you can survive, just burn incense and worship the Buddha, and quickly order to go down and have a few more bottles of good wine, and you can deliver it yourself. But remember, the hall master, I don't want to reveal my identity. I know Tiger Lord. Ho Chun-li shivered and turned around to make arrangements. At this time, after David and the others returned to the private room, the entire private room was dead silent. Everyone's eyes widened, and no one could believe that the person with the humble face just now would be Lin Tianhu, the famous underground emperor in Horrendal. Crack! Kui Ziwen suddenly slapped himself fiercely. The severe pain made him grin. This is true, not a dream. How is this possible? Kui Ziwen couldn't believe it. What just happened was true. Others are also stunned, and their eyes are blank. Chen, David, do you know that Lin Tianhu? Sun Xiaomeng looked at David in disbelief and asked. David's performance just now showed no fear at all, and even beat Lin Tianhu's people, but Lin Tianhu was not angry at all when he came. When Sun Xiaomeng asked such a question, everyone turned their attention to David. If David really knew Lin Tianhu, would they still have any good fruit? You must know that they humiliated David just now. I don't know. David shook his head. Seeing David shaking his head, Sun Xiaomeng felt very puzzled. Since you don't know each other, why is Lin Tianhu being so polite to us? I see, it must be that Lin Tianhu knew Manager Kui. Didn't he see that Lin Tianhu politely helped Manager Kui up first after he came in? At this moment, someone said loudly. Yes, he must know Manager Kui. I also found that Lin Tianhu smiled at Manager Kui. Because Kui Ziwen lost face just now, these people also saved their own lives. Now that the matter is over, of course they have to find a way to help Kui Ziwen regain face. Otherwise, after going to work, these people will not think about it anymore. Ji Yuan, what's going on here? Do you know Lin Tianhu? Sun Xiaomeng was stunned. If Kui Ziwen really knew Lin Tianhu, he wouldn't be so frightened that he knelt down and even urinated his pants at first, which obviously doesn't look like a pretense. But if he didn't know him, then why would Lin Tianhu help to get his family's foreign debt back? And just now, Lin Tianhu really helped Kui Ziwen personally, and he apologized frequently. What exactly is going on? Not only Sun Xiaomeng was dumbfounded, but everyone else was dumbfounded too. The reason why they put the credit on Kui Zaiwan was simply to curry favor with Kui Zaiwan. Seeing this, Kui Zaiwan rolled his eyes, and then said, "To tell you the truth, I have never met Lin Tianhu, but I have a friend who said that he is very familiar with Lin Tianhu, and the two often eat together. Maybe my friend is there. Lin Tianhu mentioned me before, or saw my photos, so after seeing me, Lin Tianhu recognized me at a glance." Now Kui Zaiwan can only explain like this, otherwise he really can't explain his kneeling and peeing his pants. After Kui Zaiwan explained this, everyone suddenly became enlightened. But although the matter has passed, these people are not in the mood to play anymore. After all, they all pissed their pants, and they can't play with their pants wet. Just when Kui Zaiwan wanted to take someone away, Ho Chun Li suddenly led someone to open the door of the private room. Seeing Ho Chun Li coming, Kui Zaiwan's expression changed with fright, and everyone else retreated. Seeing this, Ho Chun Li hurriedly explained, "Everyone, it was my fault just now, I didn't ask the reason clearly, I came here to apologize. Here are 2 bottles of Louis XIII, you can try them all, if you need anything, you can call at any time." Chapter 103. Ho Chun Li looked condescending and looked at David secretly. David had long noticed that Ho Chun Li was peeking at him, so he quietly waved his hand and let Ho Chun Li go out. Seeing Ho Chun Li walking back, the inside of the private room burst into flames. "I'm sorry, Louis XIII, this is a famous wine. I heard that a bottle costs 100,000, I never dreamed that I could drink such a precious wine by myself. It's great, we've all dipped in the light of Manager Kui, otherwise how could we drink a bottle of wine of 100,000? I dare not drink this wine, 1 sip is my monthly salary." Everyone gathered around Louis XIII, and their eyes were about to pop out. After all, these working-class people didn't have this opportunity today, and they were afraid that they would never be able to drink such good wine in their lifetime. At this time, Kui Zaiwan's eyes were also slightly red. Although his salary was tens of thousands a month, he didn't dare to drink a bottle of red wine of 100,000. This was too extravagant. But Kui Zaiwan can't be too eager, otherwise it's too shameless. "Okay, what are you doing around here? They all look like they're worthless, aren't they just Louis XIII, there's nothing to make a fuss about," Kui Zaiwan said with a look of pretense. "I'll be drinking with my friend, I often drink this kind of wine, including Remy Martin, all of them." Kui Zaiwan pretends to be forceful now, and can only rely on his unwarranted friend. After all, with his current strength, he is not rich enough to drink Louis XIII often. "Manager Kui, what kind of business does your friend do? He's too rich, isn't he? He has a lot of face, and he actually knows Lin Tianhu," someone asked Kui Zaiwan. "Ah, my friend is," Kui Zaiwan stammered, "this is a friend he made up, how could he say it all at once? My friend is in import and export trade and often goes abroad." Suddenly Kui Zaiwan's eyes lit up and explained. "As a result, these people want to see Kui Zaiwan's friends, but I'm afraid they won't be able to see them easily, after all, they are often abroad." After everyone heard it, they praised Kui Zaiwan for a while, and blew Kui Zaiwan into the sky. When Louis XIII was opened, Kui Zaiwan poured a small cup by himself, but David did not. Just now David glared at him and was startled. David drinks such a good wine, and 1 sip is thousands of yuan. David didn't care either, looking at a group of big men with wet crotch, when they were having a good time with wine together, David almost didn't laugh out loud. "Hanin, it's getting late, let's go back," David said to Wang Hanin. Wang Hanin looked at the time, then nodded. David followed Wang Hanin, and Kui Ziwen didn't care. After all, David was superfluous here. Xiao Meng, don't play too late, or Uncle Sun will be in a hurry. Before leaving, David told Sun Xiaomeng. Sun Xiaomeng suddenly showed displeasure and said, "Is it your control? Are you my father, my mother, or my elder? What time is it when I want to play? The dog is meddling with the rat. David, you'd better send your girlfriend home. My girlfriend doesn't need you to worry about it. It's a lot of work." Kui Ziwen snorted coldly at David. David was not talking. He had reminded Sun Xiaomeng. Since Sun Xiaomeng didn't want to leave, David didn't care. After David and Wang Hanin returned home, Wang Chongfeng was still waiting for Wang Hanin in the courtyard of the community. Seeing that Wang Hanin came back with David, Wang Chongfeng suddenly smiled and said, "Hanin, you go out with your brother David to play, and don't tell me a word, I worry about it for nothing." Chapter 104. Aunt Wang, I called Hanin to attend a colleague's party together. I'll take Hanin to our company for an interview tomorrow, David hurriedly explained to Wang Chongfeng. You don't need to explain to me. I can rest assured about what you are doing with Hanin. Even if the two of you spend the night outside, I won't say a word to Aunt Wang. Wang Chongfeng looked at David with deep meaning in his eyes. This made David a little embarrassed, and Wang Chongfeng dared to say it. Mom, what are you talking about? Wang Hanin blushed and hurriedly dragged Wang Chongfeng away. After taking 2 steps, Wang Hanin did not forget to look back at David. After today's incident, Wang Hanin's love for David has increased a lot. The next morning, David and Wang Hanin went to the company together, but it was time for work, but no one came. David and Wang Hanin waited for more than half an hour before seeing employees coming one after another. One by one, his eyes were dark, and it seemed that he played too late last night, so he couldn't get up this morning. As for that Kui Ziwen, he waited until after 10 o'clock before yawning. As soon as he sat in the office, he made himself a cup of tea. What time is it now? Is this how you work? David pushed open the door and walked into the office, and asked Kui Ziwen. This company belongs to Sonia, so it is his own. Of course, David is not happy if these people are late for work. Kui Ziwen was stunned for a moment, and then burst into anger. David, what are you? Don't forget that I'm the manager. You actually take care of me and don't urinate to take care of yourself. Just as Kui Ziwen was yelling, Sun Xiaomeng walked in with Wang Hanin. What are you doing? Get angry early in the morning. This David doesn't know how high the sky is, and it's a joke that I'm late. Kui Ziwen raised his mouth. David, your task today is to get 1/3 of your group's accounts up. If you don't come on, work overtime at night. Kui Ziwen is using his position to give David a slap in the face and let David know how powerful he is. David smiled coldly, turned around and walked out. Not to mention 1/3 of the accounts, David wanted to pay up all the debts. He didn't like others owed him money. When David went out, Sun Xiaomeng asked Kui Ziwen to go through the onboarding procedures for Wang Hanin, and also assigned Wang Hanin to his own group. It can be seen that Sun Xiaomeng likes Wang Hanin very much. In fact, Sun Xiaomen's people are not very bad, but they have a little temperament of a young lady, and some look down on others, but from Sun Xiaomen's attitude towards Wang Hanin, it can be seen that Sun Xiaomeng is not bad. After Kui Ziwen dealt with Wang Hanin's entry, he fell asleep on the office chair. They played until the early morning last night, and when they got home, they washed their wet pants and went to bed very late. While Kui Ziwen was sleeping, Xing Jun, the boss of the company, pushed the door and walked in. Seeing Kui Ziwen sleeping, Seeing Jun's brows were slightly wrinkled. Don't you know how to knock on the door when you enter the office? Kui Ziwen, who was sleeping, was awakened by the sound of the door opening. In the sales department, he is the emperor, so don't be afraid of anything. After Kui Ziwen finished speaking, seeing that no one answered, he opened his eyes and saw Seeing Jun looking at him, so frightened that Kui Ziwen fell off the chair at once. Seeing. President Seeing, why are you here? Kui Ziwen looked panicked. Seeing Jun rarely came to the sales department, I don't know why he came suddenly today. Seeing Jun just glared at Kui Ziwen, did not scold him, but looked at the people working outside through the office window, but Seeing Jun's eyes were only on David. Chapter 105. At this moment, Wang Hanin had something to look for David, and he followed David closer. He looked very familiar. Seeing Jun frowned and said, Manager Kui, who is this girl? Kui Ziwen looked quickly and found that Seeing Jun was talking about Wang Hanin, and hurriedly said, Mr. Seeing, David's girlfriend at this time, Wang Hanin, just joined the job today. David's girlfriend. Seeing Jun was shocked. Seeing Jun's expression, Kui Ziwen was startled and nodded slowly, yes, it's his girlfriend. Soon, a sneer appeared on Seeing Jun's surprised face, look for an opportunity to take some intimate photos of the two of them, but take them secretly and send them to me, got it? Kui Ziwen nodded. Seeing Jun left happily, while Kui Ziwen was stunned. He didn't know when Seeing Jun had such a hobby. Brother Chen, the one who owes the most money in our group is this boss Meng. He owes nearly 1 million, and he owes it for 2 years. Several salesmen have gone to ask for it, but none of them have come. I heard that the salesperson was beaten out. Zhang Tongjian sat at the workstation, pointed to a batch of arrears on the computer and said. David looked at the time, then nodded and said, then use him for surgery. Let's go and ask for it now. If we want to come back, it won't affect the meal. Let's go for it. Zhang Tongjian asked in surprise. Of course, otherwise how many people will go? David was stunned. Brother Chen, Zhang Tongjian was frightened, his face full of doubt. Brother Chen, I heard that boss Meng used to be a socialist, but now he has been cleaned up and started a company, but he still has a lot of people. If we just go there, we will definitely be beaten. Many salespeople have been beaten, and I heard that there is also a female saleswoman who went there, and she got a big belly. Are you afraid? David looked at Zhang Tongjian and asked seriously. Zhang Tongjian didn't know how to answer. He was really afraid. With this kind of customer, who wouldn't be afraid? That's what you do. If you're afraid, don't do it. If you haven't tried some things, you never know if you'll succeed. After David finished speaking, he directly printed out the information of boss Na Meng and walked out. Brother David, seeing that David was gone, Wang Hanin chased after him. She knew that Kui Ziwen had given David a task. At this time, David was definitely going to ask for the account, so Wang Hanin planned to help David ask for it. David's temperament is a little impulsive, and Wang Hanin is afraid that he will conflict with others. Are you going to ask for the account? Wang Hanin caught up with David and asked. Yeah. David nodded. Let me see. Wang Hanin took the information in David's hand and looked at it. The two are very close to each other, as if hugging each other, looking very ambiguous. Seeing this, Kui Ziwen in the office hurriedly took out his mobile phone and secretly took a few pictures and sent them to Seeing Jun. Brother David, I'm afraid this is a dead account. It hasn't been paid for 2 years, and it has to be passed many times. Looking at the information, Wang Hanin frowned slightly. This is the biggest sum, no matter how difficult it is, you have to try it. David smiled slightly. Well, I'll accompany you. Wang Hanin nodded. I'll go by myself, you don't have to accompany me, David quickly waved his hand and said. Your temper is too impatient, so let me accompany you. After all, we women have an advantage in getting accounts, as Wang Hanin said that, he pulled up David's arm and walked out. Upon seeing this, Kui Ziwen immediately stole a few more photos and passed them on to Xing Jun again. Just after David followed Wang Hanin out of the company, Zhang Tongjian also ran out, caught up with David and said, Brother Chen, we are a group, I can't watch you take risks by yourself, if it's a big deal, I'll go too. Chapter 106. Zhang Tongjian wanted to understand, so he chased after him. Seeing that Zhang Tongjian was going with him, David's face showed a touch of relief. He patted Zhang Tongjian's shoulder and said, Don't worry, with me, you won't be beaten. Zhang Tongjian just smiled helplessly. He decided to go with David, just to keep his job. He and David were in the same group. If David went by himself, Zhang Tongjian was afraid that the above would know and he would be fired. Soon, David and the others found Boss Meng's company according to the address on the information. The company is not big, only 2 floors, and the signboard at the door is very old. This company won't be yellow, will it? Are there still people in it? Wang Hanin looked at the sign at the door and said worriedly. If the company goes down and people run away, then the account is dead. Go in and have a look. After David finished speaking, he walked in first. As soon as I walked into the company, I heard the sound of shouting and drinking, and the smoke was lingering, and the choking people were a little breathless. In the lobby of the company, 7 or 8 shirtless men with tattoos were smoking and playing cards, all with red eyes. Seeing this scene, Zhang Tongjian regretted it instantly, and gently pulled David's sleeve. Brother Chen, why don't we come back another day? Wang Hanin's face is also a little ugly. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a company, but more like a bandit den. Since you are here, why do you have to meet the boss before leaving? David said disapprovingly. At this time, someone found David and the 3 of them, so he got up and walked over. What are you 3 doing? We are from Xinyu Daily Chemical Company, come to find Boss Meng, David said lightly. Do you want an account? When the man heard it, he immediately knew what David and the others meant, and frowned slightly. Brother Meng is not here, hurry up and don't interfere with our playing cards. After speaking, the man was about to go back to continue playing cards, but just after taking 2 steps, a girl in enchanting dress and heavy makeup came down from the 2nd floor. The girl was not very old, but she was wearing rouge and vulgar powder. The innocence of a girl. Liangzi, Brother Meng, let them go up, the girl said to the big man who had just stopped David and the others. The big man nodded, you guys go up. After finishing speaking, the big man went to play cards without looking back, while the girl glanced at Wang Hanin and said, come with me. David and the others followed the girl upstairs. Zhang Tongjian trembled with fright, and almost fell down the stairs. At this time, in an office on the 2nd floor, Boss Meng was holding a cigar, his feet were on the desk, and he was humming a little song leisurely. There were also a lot of toilet paper scattered on the floor of the office, and the air was also full of there is a smell of erosion, and you don't need to guess what happened here just now. Soon, the girl took David and the others into the office, and Boss Meng was still holding a cigar, but his eyes were always on Wang Hanin. My heart is raining. Boss Meng asked indifferently. Yes. David nodded. I owe you the money, I've already prepared it." With that, Boss Meng winked, and the girl who had just brought David and the others up immediately opened the safe beside her. I saw banknotes neatly placed inside, more than 1 million. Seeing that Boss Meng was so refreshing, Zhang Tongjian and Wang Hanin instantly became excited. They didn't expect things to go so smoothly, and Boss Meng didn't pay the bills, as the data said, and even called someone who wanted the bills. Only David's mouth was slightly raised. He knew that Boss Meng could not give money so readily. Chapter 107. Sure enough, after revealing the banknotes, Boss Meng put his feet off the desk, looked at Wang Hanin with silver eyes, and said, "I don't like dealing with men, you can have money if you want. The woman stays, you two get out, I promise to repay your arrears." When Wang Hanin heard this, he was so frightened that he hurriedly hid behind David. Seeing Wang Hanin's frightened look, Boss Meng suddenly burst out laughing. "It's just in righteousness to pay off debts, whoever wants it, you have to give it," David said coldly. "It's just right." Boss Meng looked at David like a fool. "Are you new here? Didn't your colleague tell you the consequences of coming to me to ask for the account?" "I told you, but I don't believe it, so I want to try," David nodded. "Oh. After so many years, this is the first time I have encountered such a kind. Since you want to try it, then I will fulfill you." With that said, Boss Meng swung a punch at David's nose. Wang Hanin was behind David. Seeing Boss Na Meng's shot, he pulled David nervously, wanting to pull David away so as not to be hit by Boss Na Meng, while that Zhang Tongjian hurriedly took 2 steps back, for fear of hitting him. "On!" But Wang Hanin couldn't pull David. David looked at Boss Meng with a sneer. Just when Boss Meng's fist reached David, David suddenly shot and grabbed Boss Meng's fist directly, followed by a cracking sound. Boss Meng only felt that his fist was clamped by a vice, and then the severe pain hit, making Boss Meng scream. When the girl who brought David and the others up saw this, she turned her head and ran out. It was obviously called someone. "Tongjian, you and Hanin are going to get the money. You don't want any more, but you don't want to owe us any less than a cent," David controlled Boss Na Meng and said to Zhang Tongjian. Zhang Tongjian was too frightened to move for a long time, but Wang Hanin glanced at David and hurriedly walked to the safe to start taking money. Soon, more than 1 million was filled in a bag. Wang Hanin said to David anxiously, "Brother David, the money is in hand, let's go." As soon as Wang Hanin finished speaking, a burst of noisy footsteps came, and the 7 or 8 tattooed men below had already rushed up and directly blocked the door. "Boy, let Brother Meng go quickly, dare to do something to Brother Meng, you are courting death." When Liangzi saw that David was controlling Boss Meng, he shouted loudly. "Get your people out of the way." David ignored that Liangzi, but exerted a little force, and Boss Meng's hand made a sound of bone cracking again. Boss Meng was sweating profusely from pain at this time. Although his eyes were full of anger, he had no choice but to shout loudly, "Get out of the way, very open, dodge away." David said to Zhang Tongjian and Wang Hanin, "You two take the money back to the company." "Brother David, won't you come with us?" Wang Hanin wondered. "You go first, I'll go back later," David said. Wang Hanin looked at David worriedly, but Zhang Tongjian pulled him directly and said, "Let's go quickly, staying here is also causing trouble for Brother Chen." Zhang Tongjian took Wang Hanin and ran out, but after running out of the company, Wang Hanin gave Zhang Tongjian the money and asked him to bring him back to the company. While she was waiting across the road, and David who didn't look came out, she was worried. After Zhang Tongjian and Wang Hanin left, David released Boss Na Meng. Boss Meng, who was freed, was instantly furious. "Boy, I must kill you today. Chapter 108. David ignored him, but looked at the big cigar on the desk, picked up one and sniffed it gently. Such a good cigar, what a waste. After finishing speaking, David lit one, took a light breath, and slowly exhaled a puff of smoke. David's expression seemed to be enjoying himself. Seeing David's indifference and intoxicated look on his face, everyone went crazy. Boy, you hurt Brother Meng, I want your life today, as that Liangzi said. He punched David with a punch. The punch was very powerful, and there was a slight sound of breaking the air. Obviously, this Liangzi was a trainer. In the face of Liangzi's punch, David still looked like he didn't care, took another puff of cigarette, and then spit it out at Liangzi, who was rushing over. Originally, Liangzi, who had come at an extremely fast speed, was shot by David with a puff of smoke, and the whole person seemed to have been immobilized, and suddenly stopped moving, and the fist was only a few minutes away from David. Cm distance. At this time, everyone looked at it in disbelief, and in the eyes of everyone in disbelief, David kicked out and kicked the Liangzi directly out, and the huge body flew directly out of the office, and fell heavily on the ground. Liangzi, Boss Meng's expression changed, and he hurriedly ran over to check. You must know that Liangzi is the best player here, and has practiced Sanda for more than 10 years. When Boss Meng ran up to Liangzi, he was stunned, only to see Liangzi's chest sunken, blood spilling from his mouth, his eyes wide open, lying on the ground motionless, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. Kill him for me, Boss Meng is angry. He has never been bullied like this before, and now he is going to tear David to pieces. After getting the order, the remaining people rushed towards David together. They didn't believe it, no matter how much David could fight, in this small space, he could still beat their group. Court death, David snorted coldly, and then his body rushed into the crowd like a whirlwind. David's speed was extremely fast, and those people couldn't see David's shadow at all, and they were knocked to the ground one after another. In just a few seconds, the floor of the office was full of mourning people. Although David didn't kill them, he also broke his hands and feet and was seriously injured. This time, Boss Meng was dumbfounded, and the girl beside him was even paler than powdered. He really could not have imagined that with so many of his own people, he couldn't even beat a guy who seemed to be weak. Who do you say you owe money to? You owe me money. I hate people who owe me money the most. David walked towards Boss Na Meng with a sneer on his face. You? Who are you? I owe Zinurihua money, are you not Zinurihua's employee? Boss Meng looked at David in panic and asked. Of course, Zinurihua is the company of the eldest Sui family, Sonia, and Sonia is my woman. So, don't you just owe me money? David said with a playful smile. Your woman? Boss Meng looked confused, but then his pupils began to dilate, and his eyes showed panic. You are the one. Boss Meng opened his mouth wide, and in the end he was so frightened that he even released his voice. This Boss Meng has also been involved in the Tao. Although he is not qualified enough to participate in the banquet held by Gu Wenshan, he knows a lot of news. Of course, he has heard about David, but he has never been there at all. Think about that. The person who defeated Feng Sihai, even Gu Wenshan and Lin Tian who respected, turned out to be this unremarkable young man in front of him. Chapter 109. Boss Meng couldn't believe it, but he couldn't help it. Pfft. Boss Meng couldn't support it, and knelt directly in front of David. Mr. Chen, I have no eyes, I beg Mr. Chen to spare my life. Boss Meng desperately kowtowed and begged for mercy. If David was just Sonia's boyfriend, he wouldn't be so afraid. After all, if he dared to owe the Sua family money, he wouldn't be afraid of the Sua family. Although the Sua family was the richest man in Horrendal, it was only a business family after all. Mixing in the underground, not afraid at all. But David is not only Sonia's recognized boyfriend, but also a guest of Lin Tianhu and Gu Wenchen. This is not something he can provoke. Looking at the appearance of Boss Meng, David sneered and walked directly past Boss Meng. David walked back, and Boss Meng slumped on the ground. Under him, he was already wet. When David walked to the street and was about to take a taxi back to the company, he suddenly saw Wang Hanin running over from across the road. Brother David, seeing David coming out, Wang Hanin ran towards David excitedly. When David saw that Wang Hanin hadn't left and was still waiting for him, he was immediately moved. But just as Wang Hanin was crossing the road, a speeding car rushed over. Seeing this, Wang Hanin was so frightened that he froze on the spot, and his mind went blank for a while. When the driver saw someone rushing onto the road, he also desperately stepped on the brakes. The harsh braking sound and the smoke from the friction of the tires made the whole atmosphere instantly tense. Seeing this, David, with luck in his dantian, rushed out at once, directly blocking Wang Hanin. His hands firmly resisted the speeding car. Soon, the car stopped, and Wang Hanin was still standing dumbfounded, her eyes full of terror. Hanin, it's all right, David took Wang Hanin and walked across the road. Blind, how do you walk? The driver rolled down the window and cursed loudly, apparently frightening him too. After David pulled Wang Hanin away, the driver got out of the car and looked at his car. When he saw a pair of deep palm prints in front of the car, the driver was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly got into the car and ran away. Hanin, why didn't you go back to the company? David asked with concern. At this time, Wang Hanin had recovered, and she herself did not know why she was not hit by a car. Seeing David asking herself, Wang Hanin hurriedly said, I was worried about you, so I waited for you outside. Brother David, are you all right? Wang Hanin looked at David with concern. It's okay, those guys are just bullying the soft and afraid of the hard, let's go back. David stopped a taxi and followed Wang Hanin towards the company. At this time, in the company's sales department, a group of salesmen sat around and discussed in a low voice. Then David is so courageous that he dares to go to Boss Meng's to ask for the account. He doesn't know that the people who asked for the account before were beaten up. No, why did Wang Hanin follow? That Boss Meng is so sensual, she wants to sleep when she sees a beautiful girl. The saleswoman who asked for an account last time in our company left her job after getting the account back. I heard that she was pregnant later. That's Boss Meng's. Let's wait and see, David will definitely come back with a bruised face after a while. These people were discussing in a low voice, while Sun Xiaomeng frowned slightly, worrying about Wang Hanin. She doesn't worry about David, even if David is maimed. She doesn't worry, but Wang Hanin is a little girl who hasn't been recruited yet. It would be a pity if it was ruined by that Boss Meng. Now Sun Xiaomeng is a little regretful, and she had stopped Wang Hanin and prevented her from going with David. Chapter 110. It's not time to get off work, so what are you talking about if you don't work? Do you want to deduct your salary? At this time, Kui Ziwen came out of the office and yelled at a group of salesmen. When everyone saw this, they hurriedly returned to their workstations. At this time, a salesman said to Kui Ziwen, Manager Kui, David took someone to ask for the account from Boss Meng. When Kui Ziwen heard this, he was stunned for a moment, and immediately said with a look of schadenfreude, this guy, in order to express himself, even wants his life. If he can get the money back, I will drain the toilet water." As soon as Kui Ziwen finished speaking, Zhang Tongjian came back with a sweaty face and a black plastic bag in his hand. Seeing Zhang Tongjian's return, Sun Xiaomeng hurriedly asked, "Tongjian, where is Han In?" Zhang Tongjian grabbed the water on the table and drank the bottle in one breath. Then he took a breath and explained everything one by one. When everyone heard that there was 1,000,000 in arrears to be returned in the bag, they were all surprised. Then Kui Ziwen even tore open the bag, and the white bills were scattered all over the floor. This time, Kui Ziwen's face became very ugly. He didn't expect David to actually ask for the money back. He just said that David could get the money back, so he drank the toilet water. "Han In, this girl is too infatuated, and I don't know what's so good about David." When Wang Lanlan heard that Wang Hanin actually stayed and waited for David, she immediately said, a little puzzled. Sun Xiaomeng is also a little worried about Wang Hanin. As for David's life and death, no one cares. Just when everyone felt sorry for Wang Hanin, David came back with Wang Hanin. Seeing that David's body was intact, everyone was surprised. "David, you didn't get beaten?" Kui Ziwen asked strangely. "It's only natural to pay off debts, why did they beat me?" "It's almost like I beat them," David said with a cold smile. And Sun Xiaomeng walked up to Wang Hanin. "Hanin, are you all right? Seeing that your face is not good, don't go out with him in the future." "Miss Xiaomeng, I'm fine." Wang Hanin smiled. "David, since you can ask for the account so much, then the company's debt will be handed over to you in the future. You are only responsible for asking for the account." At this time, Kui Ziwen handed over all the arrears of the entire sales department to David. David didn't refuse. Even if Kui Ziwen didn't give it to him, David would have to come up, all of it was his money. Seeing that David did not refuse, Kui Ziwen was a little surprised, but he was very happy in his heart. If all these arrears could be paid, his commission as a sales manager would definitely be indispensable. At noon, a Western restaurant near Xinyu Daily Chemical Company. In a position by the window, Xing Jun is waiting for someone with joy. Soon, Sonia walked into the Western restaurant with her bag on her back. Seeing this, Xing Jun hurriedly stood up and waved, "Sonia, here." Sonia walked over with a bit of indifference on her face, and sat opposite Xing Jun. "What's the matter with me?" "Sonia, I just feel like I haven't seen you for a long time, so I want to invite you to dinner," Xing Jun said flatteringly. "If it's all right, I'm leaving," Sonia said, getting up. Something. Seeing this, Xing Jun hurriedly stopped Sonia. "Sonia, you know how I feel about you, I have never liked another girl for so many years, can you?" "Can't." Before Xing Jun finished speaking, Sonia interrupted directly, "Xing Jun, I hope you can understand who you are just the manager hired by my Sui family, I can take you at any time. Remove and replace, you'd better focus on your work, don't spend any time on me." Sonia's face was cold, and the tone of her speech was also cold, which made Xing Jun's face change slightly. Chapter 111. You mean I'm not worthy of you? Xing Jun asked. What do you think? Sonia asked back. Xing Jun suddenly laughed at himself. Yes, I'm not worthy of you, my status is low, but why would you rather find a prisoner who has been in prison rather than give me a chance? I'm rarely better than that prisoner. Xing Jun suddenly became excited, and his tone became a little more serious. Seeing Xing Jun say this, Sonia frowned. Who am I looking for? It has nothing to do with you, and you are not qualified to ask. Do you know who that David is? Not only is he a reform through labor prisoner, he is also a man who cares. He already has a girlfriend, you know? You were deceived by him, Sing Jun said, took out his mobile phone, and showed Sonia the photos of David and Wang Hanin together. Sonia looked at the photo, her face became more and more ugly, and in the end her whole brows were twisted together. Seeing Sonia's expression, Sing Jun secretly delighted in his heart, and immediately hit the railroad while it was hot. This girl is called Wang Hanin, she is David's girlfriend, they have known each other since childhood, and the two are childhood sweethearts, and now they both work in Xinyu company, and this the job is what David found for this Wang Hanin. Sonia didn't speak, and quietly looked at the two people in the photo. Sonia, I am sincere to you, I will never deceive you, what does this David have? How can he be better than me? Sing Jun continued to reveal his heart. Snapped. Just as Sing Jun finished speaking, Sonia suddenly gave him a slap in the face. This slap directly blinded Sing Jun, looking at Sonia with an incredible look on his face, he didn't understand why Sonia hit him. Sing Jun, do you dare to be afraid of David? Do you think that I will accept you? You are wrong, very wrong, I believe that David will not deceive me, and you don't need to use these photos to follow what did I say, don't you want to know how David is better than you? I can tell you that you are not even as good as one of his little fingers. After Sonia finished speaking, she got up and left with her bag on her back. Sing Jun touched his flushed face, and there was a terrifying light in his eyes. Sonia, you forced me, Sing Jun gritted his teeth and said word by word. After Sonia walked out of the Western restaurant, her brows furrowed together again. Although she said she believed in David and didn't care at all, but when she saw David's intimate appearance with Wang Hanin, she was about to explode. Women are very jealous animals, how could she look at her man and other women so close and indifferent? Taking out her mobile phone, Sonia called David directly. Sonia has been looking for medicinal herbs for the past few days, and she has not contacted David actively, but she does not want this guy to carry himself and other women behind his back. At this time, David was eating lunch with Wang Hanin and Sun Xiaoming. Because the lunch break was short, he could only have a bite at the food stall near the company. Seeing Sonia calling him, David hurriedly got up and answered the phone. Where are you? Sonia asked directly. I'm at home. David didn't want Sonia to know about her work in her company, and David didn't work for long. After he collected the medicinal materials, found the spirit pen, and cured his mother's eyes, David would not be working anymore. He has to put his energy into cultivation, otherwise July 15th is getting closer and closer, if David can't reach his strength, he won't be able to go to Wuming Island. At home. Sonia pressed the anger in her heart, okay, stay at home. After speaking, Sonia hung up the phone directly. Chapter 112. David felt inexplicable for a while, so he could only go back to eat again. Not long after going to work in the afternoon, David was sorting out the bills. He planned to send it to Lin Tianhu and let Lin Tianhu handle it. If there was something Lin Tianhu couldn't handle, he would come forward. If he came forward in person, it would be a waste of time. But when David was sorting out the documents, there was a sudden commotion in the sales department, and then a group of people looked in the direction of the office and talked in low voices. David was a little curious, so he asked Sun Xiaoming, what happened? Sun Xiaoming glanced at David and said coldly, go back to work hard, Director So came just now, but she didn't have time. I don't know what to do with our sales department this time. Now she's in the office. You have some eyesight, but don't offend Su Dong, you are implicated in me. Su Dong. David frowned slightly. Is Sonia here? When David said a word, everyone immediately turned to look at him, and Sun Xiaomeng glared, You want to die? Can you call Su Dong's name too? Don't hurt me. Others also followed David to distance themselves, for fear that what David said would offend Sonia and implicate them all. Brother David, go back to work, don't talk nonsense. Wang Hanin took David back to work. At this time in Kui Ziwen's office, Kui Ziwen, who had drunk some wine at noon, closed his eyes, and was about to squint for a while, heard the door of the office and did not open his eyes. At this time, he knew that except for the people in the sales department, no one will come to him. And the only person who dared to walk in without knocking on the door was Sun Xiaomeng. If the others dared not to knock on the door, they would definitely be punished. Xiaomeng, you came just in time, come and press my head hurts a little, Kui Ziwen closed his eyes and said. Sonia looked at Kui Ziwen with a bit of gloom on her face, Are you asking me to press your head? As soon as Sonia finished speaking, Kui Ziwen suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw that Sonia was standing in front of him, looking at him with a gloomy expression, Kui Ziwen's expression changed instantly. Bang! Frightened, Kui Ziwen got up in a hurry. Because he was too flustered, he fell directly to the ground. Enduring the severe pain, Kui Ziwen got up and walked humbly to Sonia. Su Dong, why are you here? If I don't come, do you want to turn this place into a club? Sonia said coldly. No, I don't dare. I don't dare, I beg Su Dong's forgiveness. Kui Ziwen was so frightened that he shook his head again and almost knelt down. Sonia didn't say anything, but walked behind the desk. Seeing this, Kui Ziwen hurriedly pulled the chair out for Sonia. After Sonia sat down, she said to Kui Ziwen, Go and call David, Chen. David. Kui Ziwen was taken aback, he didn't understand how Sonia knew about David. What to do with David? What? You didn't hear me? Sonia frowned. Oh, I'll go right away. Kui Ziwen was so frightened that he hurried out. When the people in the sales department saw Kui Ziwen coming out, they hurriedly dispersed, and went back to their workstations to pretend to be busy, but their eyes kept staring at Kui Ziwen. They wanted to know what Sonia was going to do when she suddenly came to the company. I saw Kui Ziwen walking to David's station and said to David, David, Su Dong is looking for you. After you go, don't talk nonsense. David got up and walked towards the office. He knew that Sonia must have come to find him, so it was not surprising. What is Su Dong looking for this David? It's really strange. Does Su Dong know this David? Why did he look for him as soon as he came? Could it be because David asked Boss Meng to owe money, and Su Dong came to him because of this? Come on, let's pull it down. Manager Kui hasn't reported the matter to the account yet. How could Director Su know? Everyone whispered, wondering why Sonia was looking for David. Chapter 113. Hanin, do you know if David knows Su Dong? Otherwise, why would Su Dong find him? Sun Xiaomeng asked Wang Hanin curiously. After all, Wang Hanin and David have known each other for a long time, maybe Wang Hanin knows something about David. But Wang Hanin shook his head, I don't know either, but brother David just came out of jail not long ago, so he probably doesn't know a big man like Su Dong. Sun Xiaomeng was right when she thought about it. David had been in prison for 3 years, how could he know Sonia, the eldest miss of the Su family? I hope this guy doesn't talk nonsense when he sees Su Dong, it will hurt us all, Sun Xiaomeng said worriedly. For some reason, she always felt that David was unreliable. Brother David will not talk nonsense. Wang Hanin was very at ease with David. In the office at this time, David pushed the door open a little embarrassedly and walked in. Seeing Sonia sitting on the chair, David grinned. "Didn't you say you were at home?" Sonia asked with a cold face. "Ah. I'm at home, I consider the company my home now," David rolled his eyes and said. "Who is Wang Hanin?" Sonia asked straight to the point. "I said she was my sister, do you believe it?" David looked at Sonia and asked back. Sonia sneered, "Do you think I believe it?" David smiled awkwardly, and could only tell his relationship with Wang Hanin one by one. I and Hanin have only been neighbors for many years, not the kind of relationship you imagined. After listening to David's explanation, Sonia was relieved a lot. In fact, she still trusts David, but she just wanted to hear David say it herself. "I imagine. What is your relationship? What is your love relationship? It's none of my business." Self-motivated, Sonia rolled her eyes, but she was already happy inside. David also saw that Sonia was no longer angry, so he asked, "How did you know I was here? How did you know about Wang Hanin?" David was a little curious. How did Sonia know that she came to work in the company? After all, David is just an ordinary employee. It is impossible that after joining the company, the information will be passed on to the chairman of the board, Sonia. If this is the case, her chairman will be exhausted. "Don't worry about it." Sonia stood up. "If you want to go to work, tell me directly, I will give you the position of the general manager of the company. What are you doing as a salesperson, and besides, you are not short of money." "I'm not a general manager, and I don't have time to take care of it. I just come to work to deal with my parents. Otherwise, they will always worry about me. I still have a lot of things to do, and I can't stay in the company for a long time." David waved his hand quickly. He didn't want to be chained to the company. "By the way, why don't uncles and aunts live in Pinehurst Villa? Isn't the environment there very good?" Sonia recalled that David's parents insisted on leaving the villa, so she asked inexplicably. "I don't know either." David shook his head, and now David didn't know why his parents had to leave Pine Bay and said those words to him. "But I feel like someone said something to my parents and that's why they left." As soon as David's voice fell, Sonia suddenly understood. "I know, it must be that guy Seeing June, it's too much. He thought that I would be able to like him, he is too sinister." Seeing June. David was taken aback. Is this the general manager? David now finally understands why Seeing June suddenly appeared during the interview and left himself behind. It turned out that he knew about himself and his relationship with Sonia. Chapter 114. Yes, it's him. This guy has been pursuing me for many years, but I can't despise him. Sonia's eyes were full of disdain when she mentioned Seeing June, and then continued, "Otherwise, I will follow my uncle and auntie when I have time." Explain. After all, Pine Bay has a good environment and is suitable for retirement. Forget it, my parents are doing fine now, and there are some old neighbors chatting. We'll talk about it later. David intends to talk about it later. Sonia nodded, and was about to leave with her bag on her back. She just walked to the door, but suddenly turned around and said, "If someone bullies you, don't be ashamed to tell me. If it doesn't work, I'll fire that Seeing June. Do you think someone can bully me?" David smiled lightly. Sonia also smiled, opened the door and left. David beat even Feng Sihai, with such a good skill. Of course no one can bully him in this company. After Sonia left, Kui Ziwan immediately rushed back to the office and asked David, "David, what did Director Sud talk to you just now?" David gave Kui Ziwan a cold look. "I don't want to tell you, After finishing speaking, David walked out of the office and made that Kui Ziwen furious. Okay David, don't think that you can ask for the account, so don't take me as a manager, I will make you look good, Kui Ziwen yelled. After David walked out of the office, he was instantly surrounded by a group of people, who wanted to know what Sonia said to David, but David ignored them. In the afternoon, David sorted out the outstanding documents and sent them to Lin Tianhu, asking him to collect all the accounts. When it was about to get off work, Xing Jun suddenly visited the sales department, which made everyone in the sales department ready to get off work nervous. They were all afraid that Xing Jun would let them work overtime. Mr. Xing, when Kui Ziwen saw Xing Jun coming, he hurried up to meet him. Xing Jun glanced at the people in the sales department, and after a moment of looking at David, he turned to Kui Ziwen and said, Manager Kui, your sales department has performed well recently, so after get off work, I will invite everyone to a meal, you guys. All the sales departments must be present, no one can be missing, and the location is in Zion Hezhuang. After Xing Jun finished speaking, he turned around and left, leaving only Kui Ziwen standing there dumbfounded. Ziwen, did I hear it right? President Xing wants to invite us all to dinner? He also said that our sales department is doing well. Seeing this, Sun Xiaomeng hurried to Kui Ziwen and asked. Kui Ziwen nodded suspiciously, what happened to Xing always today? Did you take the wrong medicine? You must know that Xing Jun has never invited all of their sales department to dinner, and because of the arrears, Kui Ziwen was scolded every time he held a meeting. Today's sudden change made him a little overwhelmed. Manager Kui, President Xing invited us all to eat together. It's a good thing, why are you still in a daze? Hurry up and tell me. Wang Lanlan said to Kui Ziwen with excitement. Exactly, Kui Ziwen hurriedly reacted, and immediately notified everyone, for fear that someone would leave the company directly after seeing that it was time to get off work. Xing Jun told me that no one in the sales department should be left behind. Everyone, Mr. Xing just came over to praise our sales department, and we also want to invite all the staff of our sales department to dinner. In Xian and Zhuang, everyone must be there, and are not allowed to be absent. As soon as Kui Ziwen finished speaking, everyone in the sales department suddenly screamed. Damn it, Xian and Zhuang are too good, this is the best restaurant in Horindal, as famous as the Regal Hotel, what's wrong with Xing today? Have mercy. I'm going to dress up quickly, but I can't embarrass President Xing. For a while, everyone in the sales department began to prepare, especially some girls, went straight to the bathroom and started dressing up. Chapter 115. Ziwen, you have to behave well this time. If you please President Xing, maybe you can be transferred to the purchasing department as a manager. That's a bad job, Sun Xiaomeng reminded Kui Ziwen. Well, don't worry, I will work hard and buy a house in Pine Bay to be our wedding house, Kui Ziwen nodded. When Sun Xiaomeng heard this, a happy smile appeared on her face. David frowned slightly after hearing that Xing Jun suddenly invited the sales department to dinner. He knew that the meal was definitely aimed at him. But no matter what means Xing Jun has, David is not afraid. Soon, everyone in the sales department is ready to walk out of the company and go to Zion Hezhuang. Because these people come to work by car, only David and Wang Hanin are taking taxis. Hanin, get in the car, Sun Xiaomeng was driving and beckoned to Wang Hanin. Wang Hanin got into the car and smiled at Sun Xiaomeng. Thank you, Sister Xiaomeng, you're welcome to me, sit down. After Sun Xiaomeng finished speaking, she stepped on the accelerator. Hey, Miss Xiaomeng, Brother Chen hasn't gotten on the bus yet, Wang Hanan thought that Sun Xiaomeng was pulling with David, but who knew that he drove away? I don't want to pull him. What should I do if my car gets dirty? There are so many cars behind. Let him ride someone else's. Sun Xiaomeng said in disgust. Wang Hanan stopped talking, thinking that there were many people driving behind him, and whoever David was in would be the same. But just after Sun Xiaomeng left, the people behind also drove past David, but no one stopped and let David get in the car. After Zhang Tongjian drove his second-hand cherry past David, he wanted to stop the car and take David, but Kui Ziwen behind him desperately honked his horn, urging Zhang Tongjian. Seeing this, Zhang Tongjian could only glance at David helplessly, and then drove away directly. When Kui Ziwen drove past David, he stopped the car, rolled down the car window and looked at David with ridicule. David, look at your popularity, how messed up, no one is pulling you. David just smiled coldly and didn't say a word. Seeing that David didn't speak, Kui Ziwen said even more proudly, just take a taxi, you can take the invoice and ask me for reimbursement tomorrow. Seeing Kui Ziwen's smug look, David sneered, there is no need for reimbursement, maybe I will be in front of you in a while. Cut, unless you fly over, do you still want to get ahead of me? Kui Ziwen smiled disdainfully, stepped on the accelerator, and the car rushed out quickly. He didn't want to follow David's nonsense. Looking at Kui Ziwen who had already left, David transported the spiritual energy in his dantian to the soles of his feet. Although he couldn't fly yet, he would definitely be faster than a car if he performed sprint walking. But just when David was about to run away, suddenly a Bentley stopped in front of David, and Lin Tianhu opened the door and walked out. When David saw that Lin Tianhu had come, he couldn't help but say a little strangely, Lin Tianhu, do you have something to do with me? Palace Master, as soon as I notified some of the debtors, I was so frightened that they all had to pay back their money, but your company's finance has already been off work, and there is no way to collect the money, so call me the money, and I will bring it to you. It turned out that after Lin Tianhu received David's receipt, a phone call scared those who owed money back, because Xinyu Daily Chemical Company's finance company got off work early and could not receive the money. These people could only call Lin Tianhu. When David heard it, Lin Tianhu made a special trip for this, and couldn't help but smile. No hurry, you can just transfer to the company tomorrow. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.